Hello everybody, welcome to my EPQ presentation. I'm not going to say what it is on yet, however, I will have this. So this is a sentence which includes every letter of the alphabet, of the English alphabet, and I'm going to give you a challenge now. With your less dominant hand, I want you to write on that paper this sentence. You can write it any size you want, and just take your time writing it. Just use your less dominant hand. There's a piece of paper going around.
Oh.
I won't say much about this now because I will discuss it later on in the presentation. It's not easy at all. Trust me, I've tried many times. But it could be a useful skill. I think you guys are all roughly done. Round about done.
This is pretty good.
That's actually better than my other hand. This
Yeah,
might
I was
change.
saying, that's not bad.
Oh, that's pretty good going. Yep.
It's just a bit shaky.
Mine
if
just
you have to
scribbles.
concentrate.
So I'll actually discuss that later on because it's something I actually found out when going through my EPQ. But for now, I will actually announce what my EPQ is. So in my EPQ, I was investigating learning skills and changing habits, which is something I've always been interested in since a young age. I remember watching loads of documentaries about the brain, how we think, how we learn, how we remember things. And it's always interested me. Even though I'm focusing and pursuing a computer science path, it's still something that has always appealed to me, watching documentaries, reading books. So this is what I decided to do my EPQ on. As well as learning skills, I also address some social and psychological factors. So for example, people who have really bad habits, they can tend to procrastinate, and that can cause anxiety, anxiousness, hesitation for things, and that can lead to other problems as well. So if I found a way to tackle that and find a proper way to learn and improve, maybe it'll help people suffer less. So I have a few things to declare when doing this. I was in my own room. Due to COVID, I wasn't able to go to other places and around other people, which also meant that I am my own subject. And this also meant a lot of bias was in the EPQ. I will discuss this later on as well. I'm just going to declare it now, so for when following things come up, it's not too ambiguous. So these are the main points of consideration for habits. You've got the environment, you've got detachment, and you've got recursion. So if you do computer science, recursion will be a familiar word for you,
Yep.
but I'll start from environment. So when you're learning a habit or a skill, but in this particular case, a habit, the environment you're in is critical for how well you're going to learn it, how easily, and also to what extent. I was in my room and I had to change that because it wasn't applicable and it wasn't optimal for learning or doing what I wanted it to do. So I had to change it. Next thing is detachment. You may think this is from physical objects, materialistic things, but it's not. It could be social things. For example, friend groups, people, even TV shows and things. Things you want to get rid of which lead and link to a negative habit or a negative thing. You just want to get rid of that. It's a lot easier said than done, which is when the recursion comes into place. Repeatedly doing this and making sure you can stick to it is something I found key. And I actually found out something really interesting, which I will actually tell you when it comes to my evaluation. So there were also 4 laws. So I read a book by James Clear, and this was a New York Times bestseller called Atomic Habits. And in this, he discussed 4 main laws for changing and just working with habits. That was cue, craving, response, and reward. So the cue is making you want to change a habit. Why do you want to do this? What is your incentive Why does it appeal to you? Why do you want to do this? The craving. What makes you want to do it? What appeals to you the most? What stands out? Why is your whole thing wanting you to do this? The response. Make it simple. Don't make it so it's laborious for you to do. That's just going to make it really hard. There's no point doing that. You're going to struggle. You're going to want to say, I don't want to do this. What's the point? So that brings you to the reward. Everybody wants a reward. I want a reward. I want good grades. But to do that, you've got to work for it. And once you work, you get your reward. And in my case, it wasn't materialistic. It was more of a mental thing. A lot of people think of buying a phone or something cool like that as a reward, but I wanted something which was, I'm learning, I'm improving. That was my reward. So I'm going to talk through why I changed my room. So this is my environment, my motives for changing things. On the left photo is my initial layout. I couldn't get quite a good photo at the time from my gallery, but that's what I've got. On the left, you can't really see, but this is a wardrobe, and this is my desk. I had very little room for my arm. This caused a lot of bruising. I'd always have really severe bruises here, and it would be really sore, really dark patches, and it wasn't comfortable. Restricted movement, barely had any space to write. I needed to change that. First step we did was we took out my wardrobe. I had to use the help of my family because, as you can see, I'm not very strong. So I changed that. We brought in the drawers on the right, the white ones, and that was off, that wasn't level. So that meant when I'm writing, it had to go upwards, and it wasn't streamlined. So I had to change that, hence we built a desk on the side. And this is what I used for creating a level desk, and then I could separate things. On the left, you can see a lot of game-like objects. So my monitor, keyboard, etc. So that's where I have my things which are like programming, working and stuff like that, essay writing. And on the right, I've got things which I do for taking notes on paper, learning Chinese, playing piano, or even beatboxing with my loop station. So I changed it so that I had more space. It was comfortable to work. I wasn't suffering from being where I was. Although, because of the positioning and way my room was built, I did have a lot of back pain because I had to lean over to reach stuff. But I couldn't actually solve that problem. So maybe in the future, if I changed house, it would be a lot easier to do. And now this leads us to skills. So there's different approaches for when you're learning a skill. Let's take piano, like I mentioned before. You can learn your left hand first from sheet music and then play your right hand. You learn one, when you're comfortable with that, you learn the other. Or you can try them both at the same time. It all depends on the person, listening by ear, learning by reading sheet music or watching a video of someone playing. So many different approaches you can do, but it's all dependent on the one person. And I actually read a bunch of articles. One of them that I read was by Grill Spectre. I think that was in 2007 or 2008. And it was a really interesting and really in-depth article on different ways to learn skills and why they remain in your head. And I thought, what makes things stick? Repetition, doing it over and over again. So here we have 3 models. I don't have a photo of it because it's really, really confusing, but these are the 3 models. Fatigue, sharpening, and the facilitation model. The fatigue model makes it so you have a higher conductancy between one neuron to another, which means it's easier for your brain to send signals from one neuron to another. It makes it simpler and easier to do. The sharpening model is where you keep repeating things, and by repeating them, there's a lower metabolic cost. So you're using less energy to reach one neuron from another. And the facilitation model is the one I found that I applied. The facilitation model is a combination of both. It's like saying that it's easier to go from one point to another, but all of the nodes in your brain, like all the things which are related to each other, they all operate the same, no reduction or anything. Probably the best model for this. And I just want to point out that different skills you're learning, different habits, or whatever you're doing, the different models will apply. But when I was becoming ambidextrous, hence the paper I asked you guys to write on, I used a facilitation model. So on my next slide, I've actually got photos of my progress and photos of things I had to consider. Excuse the layout, I wasn't really sure how to lay this out. So on the top left, I've got different things which I realized and had to aim at when I was working on this. So we've got lines and curves, line and curve combination, and stroke order and direction. So lines and curves is like general things which characters are built, like letters are built up of, numbers are built off of. You've got straight lines for like number 1 and 7, or you've got curves for like the number 0, or even less like A. And then some things have a combination of those. For example, 2, it's got a straight line at the bottom, but it's got a curve for it. You have to learn to make them flow into each other. Stroke order and direction. I didn't think this would be something which is so important, but when I started writing, I've realized that it was. Because when I'm writing with my right hand, I just go from top left to the down. But when I'm writing my left hand, the motion's different. So I had to make it so it wasn't pulling away. I had stability and control. And that's where stroke order and direction came from. I got this idea from when I was learning Mandarin. So I was writing characters, and stroke order is really important for that because it can change the way the character look and how it's meant to write and look. So that's how I got the idea. So on the photo, the middle photo, you can see how I use repetition. This came from a facilitation model. I had stroke orders, different types of letters, strokes, characters. I just had to keep going over and over and over again. And I had this idea as well from when I was younger and we were first learning to write. We were given a stroke for like the letter S, and we had to keep going over and over again until we could do it easily. So I applied that, and on the right you can also see the different types of straight lines and curves which I used as well. And then this is a test of me writing with my left hand. And that will bring me to my evaluation. So a few things went well and a few things could be better. I'm going to start with what was worse, because that way I can leave on a good note. So one of the problems which I had with this was a large amount of bias, as I spoke about before. This means that what I did might not work best for everybody else. I said that roughly for the fatigue models and different models which you could use might be better for different people. So it's similar to that, except I won't know because I had such a small population. So if I was to change things, I would increase the population so I had more people to get data from. For example, hopefully when COVID ends, I might actually investigate this and ask you guys to participate. My fabulous audience. Some other problems was I was only using my environment, my room. What if someone's environment was different? So you had this room, it's big, it's spacious. How would things be there? How would it be like that? Or maybe it's a work environment, like a school desk or a work table area, a cubicle, even a bathroom. Any different type of things you could use, and I want to investigate it, see what works best, make it optimal. But now we can talk about what went well. So I managed to address key things which you would consider for changing habits and learning skills. And that was one of the main things I wanted to find out when going through my EPQ. I found out that when you're changing habits, you need to think about what's related to things. It's not just the habit itself, it's everything connects. You have to think about that to change it. With learning skills, you've got to think about different ways to do it. It's not always just doing it over and over again, it depends what you're doing. And I also looked into the psychology of things. I didn't have it much on here, but on my actual dissertation, I have like a whole section, like a few paragraphs on talking about how it can affect your mind and how the way you think actually influences how well you learn things. So that would bring me to the end of my presentation. However, I do have time for questions if anyone has any.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you looked particularly at handwriting. One thing that interests me as an English teacher, when we look at confidence in writing, for example, what do you think about the confidence in the content and what you are able to write as compared to the quality of the handwriting? So when you were trying to write with your right hand or your left hand, did your confidence in what you were writing change?
It did. I would have to write slow. I was like, I didn't want to make a mistake. I had to write slower. But one of the benefits of being ambidextrous is say you have a disability or something, or you break your arm and you can't write, you have your other hand which can allow you to still do work. One of the things I actually found out was doctors tend to learn to be ambidextrous, because that means that if they're in a rush or they've got right hand occupied, they can use their left hand. Or if it's in a comfortable position, they need to be trained and confident in using both hands. You can become more confident, it just takes time and practice.
Do you think also the quality of the writing therefore also impacts on how well you think you've done? Even if the content is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but actually if it's difficult to read and you don't have confidence in it, as you say, you've got to go slower because your handwriting's not good. Do you think that psychologically impacts on your confidence in academics?
I do, because if you're not confident in your work, if it doesn't look good, it's gonna make you feel bad, and that's just gonna negatively influence the other things you do. And that's something I found out, not with writing, but with procrastination itself. I procrastinated and that made me feel bad, and as a result, my quality of work went down, my grades went down, and thanks to this, my EPQ, I actually improved all of that. So I do think it's a really important factor to consider.
How do you think, I realize that, sorry, I should formulate my question earlier. If people do not see a visible improvement over time, how do you think that would affect their motivation to continue? And how do you think people should alleviate that and overcome it to become better?
From my personal experience, if I don't see improvement over time, I might get annoyed or frustrated, or I'd see like, what's the point? Like, I'm not improving, I'll just stop. So to address that, I think, look at different ways to do things. I talked about different models earlier, facilitation, sharpening, and fatigue model. Try applying one of those, different ones. Or maybe approaching it different, like when learning piano. There's so many different ways you can do things. It's just being open-minded and being able to see them, that will make it possible. You can do it. It's all just practice and training.
Okay, so how would you suggest someone stays motivated if they feel like nothing's working for them then, besides finding new things to do?
First step, start. If you're hesitant on starting, you're just going to keep putting it off, and that's procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
So to address that, you actually have to start first. Give yourself a reason to want to do it. Give yourself an incentive, a reward. The reward doesn't have to be something which you pay for. It could be something which you see like improvement. For example, once you do that, you can try different ways of doing things. Just make it so it makes you happy.
Yeah, so you would say there's a definite correlation between, for example, I'm a terrible procrastinator, and in terms of your correlation with that and anxiety, for example, yeah, it's about if you're extremely well motivated to do something, procrastination levels would typically be lower. But would you say with anxiety that sort of means there's more procrastination, or?
Surprisingly, no.
No, okay, interesting.
It varies per person. Everything is all dependent on the person. Maybe in like, if you have a whole population of data, then you might see a correlation between it. But I think the amount of anxiety you have, sometimes it can be good.
Yeah.
Like fear can push you to do something.
Yeah.
Or if it's too much, then it shuts you down. So it depends on how much you have and how well you can handle it. So it's all dependent on the person.
How do you think socioeconomic factors would affect somebody being able to improve themselves in the ways you mentioned?
It does affect it a lot. I think then it comes into willpower and patience. For me, I couldn't change my environment properly as much as I wanted to, which did make it slightly hard for me to do, but it is still possible. Just don't give up, don't stop, just keep doing it and pushing forward.
I'm going to relate this to the wider field of education in general. Okay, so there you go. So take, for example, the last 2 years experience in terms of what do you feel and this is terrible putting you on the spot, how do you see the models that you've been talking about apply to what you might learn in the classroom in different environments or different subjects or different?
First of all, a lot of the practice I did for the habits and improving and making to stop procrastinating was I applied it to maths.
Yeah.
I did loads of past paper questions and repeating the type of question I did to make me comfortable with them. Keep doing it over and over again. I stopped procrastinating because I noticed I was improving. I was getting more marks. I was getting questions right. I was getting a higher grade. I got better grades. That's a really big incentive, and I got what I wanted. So that's a really big way it can improve in school life, for example, maths. different subjects may have different things which work better for them. For example, with English, when you're writing words or improving your writing, familiarize yourself with the structure of answering questions and then make it so you're improving your writing. Not the quality of it, but the way you can write, how easy it is for you. I found that when writing with my left hand, I struggled. My muscles were weak. They weren't used to it. So I had to keep practicing and thinking about how my muscles work to make it comfortable to write. So by practicing, getting your body used to it, getting your mind used to it, it will become easier and more effective.
Do you think that could be a technique for maybe making students realise that if they simply practice the art of holding a pen and writing words on a page, they will get better at, say, timing in exams because they'll be able to write more fluently and more clearly? So if I set, say, my year 10s a task, okay, pick up a pen with your non-dominant hand and try writing again the last sentence you wrote, and try writing it 5 times. By the time they get to the end of it, they're fatigued. So they start to realise how much they need to practice to get better at it with their dominant hand.
They may, but then it also, that was a really good point, but it depends on the person itself. They need like a proper incentive, and I've been to school, I know what students are like, and I don't think that will be enough. But if they want to improve, then definitely that will hopefully make them realise how much practice is key.
So how do you think we could foster this will to improve? I know from myself that when I set my mind to something, I will stay up like late and keep on doing it until I get it right. But for some people, that's just not a motivating factor.
I think, well, like I said, with the incentives and rewards, it can be different things for different people. For me, it was a psychological thing, improving. For others, it might be like, get good grades, get money. I've seen a lot of people at my old school have that happen, and they would work a lot harder for it. And money is a big incentive in the world. So that could be a reward itself, but that depends on your family or etc. There's so many different factors which can be. But there's so many different things you can think of when trying to get incentive and reward for improving. It might be like, how about, okay, you can't meet anyone until you've done this. So get it done, and it has to be a certain quality. Don't be easy on yourself. Push. Just do your best. Don't settle for less. Any other questions?
No, I think we're all done.
That was exceptionally good.
Thank you for coming.
Well done.
I will stop recording now.